My sister Amanda never met her bio mom. My dad raised her alone until she was barely 1. My dad and my mom got married in 1992. Amanda knew that my mom wasn't her bio mother. She started pressuring my dad for information on her mom when she was around 17. My dad always gave her vague answers and refused to talk about her bio mom, which put a strain on their relationship. Enters our uncle and revealed the family secret. Apparently, Amy's mom wanted an abortion. She was 19. But my dad and his parents were able to bribe her. They offered her money if she followed up with the pregnancy. And she accepted. My grandparents sold one of their houses and gave her half of that money to Amy's mom when the pregnancy was viable. And the other half she received when she waived her parental rights over Amy to let my mom adopt her when she was 4. My uncle wasn't supposed to tell her that. My grandparents were furious. Amy stopped her crusade to meet her bio mom, and her relationship with my dad went back to normal. Amy never mentioned her bio mom again. Dad got her into therapy after that. A month ago, Amy found out that she was pregnant. The pregnancy was an accident. She switched birth controls. The problem being, Amy is about to start her surgical residency and her hours are insane. It is basically impossible to raise a baby while working in that rhythm, so she wanted an abortion. The problem is that Mark, her fiancé, 6 years together, wanted her to keep the baby. It caused a big fight. In a move to convince Amy to keep the baby, Mark told Dad about this. Until that point, no one in our family knew about this. Dad talked with her, and they got into an enormous fight. Amy got the abortion 10 days ago. Mark ended up breaking up with her. She is obviously really sad. My dad was acting like a jerk. He was pretending that Amy didn't exist. He didn't want to talk or see her. So on Christmas Day, we were exchanging gifts. When everyone had already finished giving each other gifts, Dad got up and gave Amy her present. He gave her an envelope in front of everyone and told her to open it. It was 3 pictures with something written on the back, a name, an address, and a phone number. Dad told her that he was tired of babying her, that this is a photo of her bio mom and her 2 sons. That was her bio mom address, and that he contacted her bio mom and she is willing to speak with Amy. He gave her Amy's number. Dad thinks that they will have a great relationship since they are so similar. Amy broke down crying. I ended up in a fight with Dad, called him a monster for doing that to her. He just said he was just tired and left. We ended up leaving and she spent the rest of Christmas crying on my shoulder. She is a mess since that. My younger brothers called me a Grinch for making a scene and ruining Christmas. My mom was silent during the whole thing. My parents have been giving me the cold shoulder since Christmas. Tim and I met in an English literature class our junior year of college, and we've been together the 10 years since. While he ended up going into IT, I stayed in the liberal arts track and ended up doing non-profit work after college when I realized I didn't actually want to be a school teacher. Just to say that we always assumed he'd out-earn me by a considerable margin. Though when he made more, I always insisted we split things evenly to avoid potential resentment down the road. I've had sort of a non-linear career path, but ended up switching to the corporate world. To make a long story short, my liberal arts degree and time doing non-profit work gave me a lot of skills that enable me to really excel professionally in some more niche areas. I recently started a new job as a consultant, making way more than I'd ever anticipated. When I got the offer, I told Tim that the pay was amazing, but he didn't ask about the actual amount and I didn't want to be braggy about it, especially since I was fairly sure it was above his current income. Well, we just put in an application for a new place. And in the process of having to submit our pay stubs, it's become obvious that I make roughly 30% more than he does now. I expected him to think that was cool, since he's a feminist and has always been super supportive of my career. But instead he started to make increasingly harsh jabs about how I cheated the system to get where I am. That no English lit major makes more than a cybersecurity professional without cheating somehow. His major point is that I got my first job out of nepotism, which set me up to trample more qualified people who didn't have the same advantages. It's true that I got my first post-college job after being referred by a sorority sister, but it was for non-profit work making $22K /year, not exactly at somebody's daddy's firm. He also points out that at my first corporate job, I snagged a big promotion after volunteering to take on starting up the company's diversity / equity / inclusion program, and I'll admit that were I a white man, it's highly unlikely I would have been able to be the face of the eventually high-profile diversity program. Tim also notes that I was awarded a small college scholarship for being a promising female writer, when no such scholarship existed for males. But all that said, I still don't feel like I cheated the system, and it makes me angry to listen to him joke about it. Especially since I grew up blue-collar and worked full-time while going to school full-time to afford my degree. I reached a breaking point yesterday when he made a crack about how the new / first woman on his team is an obvious diversity hire. I told him that his jokes about women cheating the system to get ahead aren't funny or guy talk ribbing, as he says. They make him sound like an insecure little boy. He told me I was being a naive Karen and we haven't really talked since yesterday. I am a 28 years old female. And I do babysitting on the weekends to make extra cash. There is one family I definitely should have phased out by now, but the kids are cute and if I don't have another job, it's easy money. My issue is, the mom is never home on time. She used to not give me return times, but finally I started asking as it made it impossible to get anything done on the weekends. I'd go babysit so she could go to brunch, but she'd be gone from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. My whole day was gone. After that, she'd start giving me times but never stick to them. She wouldn't even call to tell me, she'd just stay out. On Saturday, I got to her house at 6 and she was supposed to be home by 9. I told her she needed to be on time because I had plans to go out with friends. I was even getting ready at their house after I put the kids to bed. She promised. Of course, 9 o'clock rolls around and she's not home. I call her, no response. Text, no response. Another hour. Nothing. Still calling and texting. Finally, it is midnight. By this point, my plans are long ruined but I'm pissed and exhausted. I call her and leave a voicemail saying if she's not home in the next hour, I'm considering the kids abandoned and calling the cops. I also text her this. I try calling her 30 minutes later and it goes to voicemail on the second ring. I text her again and she leaves me on read. If she had reached out saying, hey, I'm staying out until X time, I would have stayed. I don't know any of her family nor the father of the kids, so I can't call them. I gave her a grace period of 15 minutes and tried calling again, finally called the cops, non-emergency line. They showed up and I showed our agreement in text from earlier in the week confirming that she'd be home by 9. They tried contacting her, didn't answer. I was dismissed and they took the children to the police station. I go home and go to bed. I am awoken at 3 a.m. by a frantic call. It's her. Where are the kids? Why am I not here? I tell her I followed through on my threat, check the police station. She cursed me out, I hung up and went to bed. The next day, she sends me an essay saying the kid's father was called and there's a DCF investigation launched against her. She called me every name under the sun, but I didn't think I was wrong until I spoke to a friend with kids. She said I should have just waited it out and refused to ever sit for her again. She asked if her potentially losing her kids was worth me being petty. So me and my husband, who I'll call Jake for this story, have been together for 5 years and married for 3. We have recently started trying for a baby as we both felt like that was the next step in our life together. And 3 weeks ago I got a positive test back. We were really happy and told our families, and now my mom and mother-in-law want to throw a big baby shower for us. It was just super good news all around. Well, 2 nights ago me and Jake were getting ready for bed when he reminds me to go through the house and make sure all the lights are off. Now he can be a little lazy at times. And it has become a nightly routine for me to make sure all the lights are off that he leaves on before we go to bed. I wasn't feeling very well and asked if he could just do it since he wasn't doing anything and was literally standing by the door. He then tells me, no, this is what is expected of you every night. I was a little hurt, but I didn't want to fight with him, so I just did it. When I came back, Jake goes on this very long and unprovoked rant saying things like, just because you are pregnant does not mean anything will change, and you are still expected to cook, clean, and do all the chores every day because how can you be expected to be a mother if you can't handle a little work? He wasn't yelling or anything, He was talking to me quietly like I was 2 inches tall. I was shocked because I had never heard him say anything like this. The rant went on for about 30 minutes before I interjected and asked, "Well, what do you plan on doing to help me with all of this?" He then got extremely defensive, saying he works his ass off at his job to provide for me and what is going to be our future children. For context, I don't work ATM, my job was not paying enough to justify me going, so I am a full-time college student. He ended by saying that it doesn't matter how I feel physically or mentally, it is a mother's job to push through. And if he helped and babied me, I wouldn't be a good mother. I got extremely upset and started yelling, and I said that, "I wish I would have known this is how you felt before I got pregnant with your baby." There was a moment of silence before he started crying, and he left for the night to stay at his mother's house. He hasn't been back yet, and my mother-in-law and sister-in-law have called me berating me and saying I broke Jake's heart with what I said, and I need to apologize immediately, and until I do he isn't coming home. I don't know how to feel. So for yelling at my husband after he said he isn't helping me with anything during the pregnancy because it's a mother's job to deal with it? Okay. I am getting some things together and am going to be headed to my mom and dad's house. My mom is furious with him and doesn't want me apologizing to him or talking to him without the situation either being recorded or having a witness.